I stood frozen in the doorway of St. Mary's Cathedral, the glossy invitation trembling between my fingers. The elegant cursive spelled out the worst betrayal imaginable: join us in celebrating the union of Daniel Harrington and Camille Westbrook. My husband's name next to another woman's. A wedding happening right now, at this very moment. The same husband who had kissed me goodbye this morning. Who had looked me in the eyes and told me he was attending a business conference in Seattle. The same husband who, according to the court documents that had mysteriously appeared in my email inbox 2 hours ago, had divorced me 6 months earlier without my knowledge. My name is Vivian Lockhart, and until this moment, I thought I knew exactly who I was: a loving wife, an accomplished architect, a woman with her life perfectly in order. Now, with each second that ticked by, that identity crumbled like sand through my fingers. I drew in a shaky breath and stepped inside, the sound of a string quartet growing louder. My legs moved automatically, carrying me toward the main chapel. I caught glimpses of floral arrangements, white ribbons adorning the pews, guests in their Sunday best whispering in anticipation. The chapel doors stood partially open. Through the crack, I could see him standing at the altar: Daniel, my husband of 7 years, resplendent in a tailored tuxedo that I recognized. I'd helped him choose it for his brother's wedding last year. His face was alight with the same smile he once directed at me, only now it was fixed on a willowy brunette in a flowing white gown. My stomach twisted. How was this possible? How could he be legally marrying someone else when I had never signed divorce papers? Never appeared before a judge? Never even known our marriage was in jeopardy? But the court documents told a different story. A dissolution of marriage, supposedly with my consent. My signature, or what appeared to be my signature, on every page. Dates, notary stamps, case numbers. Everything in perfect order. The officiant's voice drifted toward me: if anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. Time stretched like taffy. The universe shrunk to this single moment. I pushed the doors open with both hands. I object, I said, my voice carrying across the hushed room. He's still married. To me. Every head turned. Gasps rippled through the assembly like wind through tall grass. Daniel's face drained of color as our eyes locked. Vivian, he breathed, barely audible even in the sudden silence. The bride, Camille, followed his gaze, confusion contorting her perfect features. Danny? Who is this woman? Her voice quavered. I approached the altar, church runners silencing my footsteps. I'm his wife, I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. And I never signed divorce papers. Daniel stepped forward, his hand outstretched as if to physically halt my words. Vivian, please, this isn't the place. Then where is the place, Daniel? The calm in my voice shattered. In our home, where you've been lying to me for, how long? Months? Years? While you built a life with her? A distinguished older man, likely the bride's father, stood up from the front row. What is the meaning of this? Daniel, explain yourself immediately. Daniel loosened his bow tie, eyes darting between me, his bride, and his almost father-in-law. There's been a mistake, he stammered. The papers were all filed. Everything was finalized months ago. I pulled out my phone and opened the email, showing the screen to Camille's father. These were sent to me 2 hours ago. Anonymous email. My supposed signature on every page, a signature I never made. The officiant cleared his throat. I think we need to take a brief recess. Chaos erupted like a volcano. Camille collapsed into her mother's arms, wailing. Guests stood, some backing toward the exit, others pressing forward for a better view of the spectacle. Daniel tried to approach me, but his best man, his brother Michael, held him back. "Not now, Danny," I heard Michael mutter. "Not like this." A woman in a sleek blue dress appeared at my side, taking my elbow with surprising gentleness. "Let's step outside," she said firmly. Her voice was familiar. When I turned to look at her, recognition hit me like a physical blow. Jessica Carter. Daniel's divorce attorney. "You," I hissed, pulling my arm away. "You made this happen. You helped him fake my signature. That's fraud. That's criminal." Jessica's perfect composure faltered for just a moment. "Ms. Lockhart, I assure you." "Save it," I snapped. "I want every document you filed. Every communication. Every piece of evidence showing how you helped my husband commit fraud to marry another woman." She regained her composure quickly. "I processed the paperwork I was given. If there's been some irregularity, it wasn't on my end." Her eyes flickered toward Daniel, who was now being ushered into a side room by the officiant and Michael. "You'll be hearing from my lawyer," I promised. Jessica's lips tightened into a thin line. "Perhaps we should all take a moment to calm down. This is clearly a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" I laughed, the sound brittle and strange even to my own ears. "My husband is trying to marry another woman while still legally married to me. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime." As we spoke, Camille's father approached, his face mottled with fury. "Ms. Lockhart, is it? I'm Richard Westbrook. I think we need to have a conversation about exactly what's going on here." I looked between him and Jessica, these strangers who had been drawn into Daniel's web of lies alongside me. "Yes," I agreed. "We absolutely do." As we were escorted to a private room adjacent to the chapel, I caught a final glimpse of Camille being comforted by her mother and bridesmaids, her perfect day in ruins. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy for her. She was another victim in Daniel's elaborate deception, though perhaps not as blindsided as I was. I had no idea then that this moment, standing in a church full of strangers, exposing my husband's betrayal, was just the first domino to fall. The secrets I would uncover in the coming days would shake the very foundation of the life I thought I knew. The rectory office felt suffocatingly small with 5 of us crammed inside. Daniel stood by the window, shoulders hunched, refusing to meet anyone's gaze. Michael hovered near him, part protective brother, part prison guard. Richard Westbrook paced the limited floor space, while Jessica perched on the edge of a chair, frantically typing on her phone. I alone remained perfectly still, arms crossed, waiting. "Explain," Richard demanded, stopping his pacing to glare at Daniel. "Now." Daniel ran a hand through his perfectly coiffed hair, disheveling it in a way that once would have made me reach up to smooth it back into place. "The divorce was filed 6 months ago," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "I got confirmation that everything was finalized. I have the papers." "Papers with my forged signature," I interjected. "Papers I never saw, for a court date I was never notified about." Daniel finally looked at me, his blue eyes, the same eyes I'd woken up to thousands of mornings, now filled with a mixture of panic and something else. "Relief? Vivian, please. I can explain everything, but not like this. Not here." "You had 7 years of marriage to explain things to me," I said coldly. "You chose deception instead." "Mrs. Harrington," Jessica began, then paused when both Camille's father and I turned to her. Ms. Lockhart, I mean. I processed the divorce papers that were presented to me. They appeared to be in order, with your notarized signature on all required documents. Well, they weren't in order, I said, pulling out my phone again. And judging by the timestamp on this email, someone knew it. Someone wanted me to find out exactly like this. Michael stepped forward, extending his hand toward me. May I? He asked, gesturing to my phone. I hesitated, then handed it to him. Michael had always been the more thoughtful of the Harrington brothers. We'd been genuinely friendly, or so I'd thought. Now I wondered if he'd been in on the deception all along. He examined the email, scrolling through the attached documents with increasing concern. Daniel, he said quietly, these signatures don't match Vivian's. Not even close. Daniel paled. That's impossible. I had. He cut himself off abruptly, catching the dangerous glint in my eye. You had what, Daniel? I pressed. Someone forged my signature? Did you honestly think I wouldn't find out? That I'd just continue living as your wife, never knowing you'd legally divorced me and married someone else? Richard Westbrook slammed his hand on the desk. This is outrageous. I want to know exactly what's going on here, Harrington. Did you or did you not legally divorce this woman before proposing to my daughter? Daniel looked trapped, his eyes darting between me, Richard, and Jessica. I thought everything was taken care of, he managed. I was told the papers were all filed correctly. By whom? I demanded. A knock at the door interrupted us. The officiant poked his head in, his clerical collar slightly askew. Excuse me, but, the guests are becoming quite restless. And Miss Westbrook is asking for her father. Richard straightened his jacket. Tell Camille I'll be right there. He turned back to Daniel, pointing a finger at his chest. This isn't over. Not by a long shot. As he left, Jessica stood, smoothing her dress. I believe the best course of action is for all parties to retain separate counsel and sort this out properly. The ceremony obviously cannot proceed under these circumstances. How kind of you to clarify that point, I said bitterly. Jessica ignored my sarcasm. Daniel, we should speak privately. No, I said firmly. No more private conversations. No more secrets. I deserve answers, and I deserve them now. Daniel looked desperate. Vivian, please. Let me explain everything later. I'll come to the house tonight, and we can talk. The house? I laughed incredulously. Our house, you mean? The one you've apparently been using as a cover while you built a life with another woman? Or did you buy a new house with her, too? One of those in the West Side neighborhood you always loved? The flash of guilt across his face told me everything. Oh my God, I breathed. You did, didn't you? All those late nights at the office. All those business trips. You weren't working. You were with her. In your new home. Michael stepped between us. This isn't helping anyone, he said quietly. Vivian, you have every right to be furious, but tearing each other apart in a church isn't going to solve anything. I stared at him, betrayal burning fresh. Did you know? All this time, did you know what he was doing? Michael's hesitation was answer enough. Unbelievable, I whispered. All of you. Just unbelievable. Vivian, Daniel started. No, I cut him off. I'm done here. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. All of you will. I grabbed my phone from Michael's hands and walked toward the door. And Daniel? Don't come to the house. Not tonight, not ever. It's not your home anymore. I walked out with my head high, ignoring the stares of lingering guests, ignoring Daniel's calls from behind me. I made it all the way to my car before the trembling started, violent shudders that racked my entire body as the full weight of what had happened crashed over me. 7 years of marriage. A decade-long relationship. All of it built on a foundation of lies that had finally crumbled beneath me. I started the car with shaking hands. I needed to talk to someone who would understand, someone who wouldn't judge, someone who would help me make sense of this nightmare. I needed my oldest friend. I needed Meredith. Meredith lived in a converted warehouse loft downtown, the kind of space that perfectly complemented her personality, open, artistic, and unapologetically authentic. When she opened the door, her smile melted into shock. "Viv? What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." I opened my mouth to explain, but all that came out was a strangled sob. Meredith pulled me inside, her arms wrapping around me in a fierce hug. Hey, it's okay. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together." She led me to her oversized couch, a vintage monstrosity upholstered in rich burgundy velvet. It had always been my favorite place to curl up, to spill secrets and dreams over bottles of wine. Now it would hold the worst revelation of my life. "Daniel," I managed between sobs. He divorced me without my knowledge. And today he was marrying someone else. Meredith's eyes widened. "What? That's impossible. That can't be legal." "It's not," I said, wiping furiously at my tears. "He forged my signature on the papers. He's been living a double life for God knows how long." "Jesus Christ," Meredith whispered. "The lying bastard. How did you find out?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the anonymous email. "This came 2 hours ago. Just in time for me to crash the wedding." "You went to the wedding?" Meredith's voice rose in disbelief. "Holy shit, Viv. What happened?" As I recounted the scene at the church, Meredith's expression shifted from shock to outrage to grim satisfaction. "Good for you," she said when I finished. "I mean, it's horrific that you had to go through that, but at least you exposed him in front of everyone. No way he can weasel out of this now." "But who sent the email?" I asked, scrolling through it again. "Who knew about the wedding and the fake divorce and sent this to me at exactly the right moment?" Meredith took the phone, examining the email address. Anonymous remailer. Could be anyone. She looked up sharply. "You don't think Daniel did it himself, do you? Some kind of twisted guilt thing?" I shook my head. "No. You should have seen his face when I walked in. He was genuinely horrified." "What about the bride? This Camille person? Maybe she found out about you and wanted to clear the air before making a huge mistake?" "I don't think so. She seemed completely blindsided." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. Whoever it was, they wanted maximum damage. They wanted everyone to know what Daniel had done. Meredith handed me a glass of water from her coffee table. "Drink this. And then we're calling Eleanor. You need a lawyer, like yesterday." Eleanor Zhao had been in our university study group years ago before going on to become one of the city's most formidable divorce attorneys. The irony wasn't lost on me that I now needed her services for a divorce I supposedly already had. "It's Saturday," I objected weakly. "She won't be working." "For this?" "She'll make an exception." Meredith was already dialing. Besides, you know Eleanor. She lives for this kind of dramatic legal clusterfuck. While Meredith explained the situation to Eleanor, I scrolled through my phone, past the damning email to the messages and missed calls that had accumulated in the past few hours. Several from Daniel, of course. One from Michael. 3 from unknown numbers that I suspected were members of the wedding party. And strangely, 2 from my boss, Harrison Bennett. Why would Harrison be calling me on a Saturday? I opened his text messages. Harrison, Vivian, call me ASAP. Something concerning has come up. Harrison, this is urgent. It involves your access to project files. My stomach dropped. Had Daniel's deception somehow spilled over into my professional life? I worked at Bennett and Associates, one of the city's premier architectural firms. I'd started there fresh out of graduate school and had worked my way up to senior architect over 8 years. My most recent project, revitalizing the historic Carter Building downtown, was the crown jewel of my career. Eleanor's on her way, Meredith announced, ending her call. She must have noticed my expression. What's wrong now? I showed her Harrison's texts. I don't know what this means, but it can't be good. I couldn't believe Harrison's cryptic messages could have any connection to Daniel's betrayal, but the timing was too suspicious to ignore. Call him, Meredith urged. Whatever it is, better to know now. With trembling fingers, I dialed Harrison's number. He answered immediately. Vivian, thank God. Where are you? I'm at a friend's. Harrison, what's going on? He exhaled heavily. I need you to come to the office. There's been an incident. Your computer was accessed last night, and several confidential client files were downloaded. The Carter Building plans, specifically. The room seemed to tilt sideways. That's impossible. I lock my computer every night, and the files are password protected. Someone had your passwords, Vivian. His voice was grave. Security footage shows Daniel entering the building at 11:42 p.m. using your access card. He was at your desk for approximately 17 minutes. My legs gave out, and I sank back onto Meredith's couch. Daniel stole the Carter Building plans? Why would he? And then it hit me with the force of a physical blow. Westbrook Development. Camille's family company. Our chief competitor for the Carter Building renovation. Oh my God, I whispered. The Westbrooks. They're bidding against us for the Carter contract. Harrison's silence confirmed my suspicion. Vivian, I need to ask, and please be honest with me, did you have any knowledge of this? No. The word exploded from me. Harrison, I just found out today that Daniel has been lying to me about everything. He divorced me without my knowledge using forged documents. He was marrying Camille Westbrook today when I received evidence of the fraud and stopped the wedding. There was a long pause. Jesus Christ, Harrison finally muttered. I don't even know what to say. I had no idea, I continued, desperation creeping into my voice. I swear to you. I thought we were happily married. I never would have compromised the project. I believe you, he said after a moment. But the board may need more convincing. This looks very bad, Vivian. Very bad indeed. The Carter Building project was worth millions. If Daniel had passed our proprietary designs and bid details to the Westbrooks, it could constitute corporate espionage. My career could be over. My reputation destroyed. Just like my marriage. I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said, ending the call. Meredith, who had heard my side of the conversation, was already grabbing her keys. I'm driving you. You're in no condition. Eleanor arrived just as we were leaving. Tall, immaculately dressed even on a Saturday, she took one look at my face and switched seamlessly from friend to attorney. Tell me everything in the car, she instructed, following us down to the street. I've already filed an emergency injunction to prevent Daniel from accessing any joint accounts or property. Now I need every detail about these forged divorce papers. The drive to Bennett and Associates passed in a blur of legal terminology and grim predictions. Eleanor was furious about the forgery but clinically practical about our next steps. This is actually good for us, she explained. Forging your signature on legal documents is a felony. We can use this to secure a very favorable divorce settlement. And if he's also committed corporate espionage using your credentials, we can leverage that as well. I don't care about leverage, I said hollowly. I cared about him. I loved him. We were trying for a baby last month. The car fell silent. Even Eleanor, with her razor-sharp legal mind, had no response to the human devastation that statement represented. Bennett and Associates occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming downtown high-rise. On weekends, the office was usually deserted except for the occasional ambitious associate putting in extra hours. Today, I was surprised to find Harrison, our head of security, and 2 grim-faced men I didn't recognize waiting in the conference room. Vivian, Harrison greeted me, his usual warmth tempered by the circumstances. Anne. This is my attorney, Eleanor Zhao, I said, and my friend Meredith Blake. They're here as my support and counsel. Harrison nodded. This is James Chen, our head of security, and Detectives Martinez and Rosenthal. My heart stuttered. Detectives? Corporate espionage is a criminal matter, Ms. Lockhart, Detective Martinez explained. Particularly when it involves projects with government funding, like the Carter Building. I sank into a chair, Eleanor immediately taking the seat beside me. I had no knowledge of my husband's actions, I said firmly. In fact, until 2 hours ago, I was unaware that he had fraudulently divorced me and was attempting to marry Camille Westbrook, whose family company is competing with us for the Carter contract. I handed Detective Martinez my phone, showing him the anonymous email with the forged divorce documents. We'll need to verify this, he said, examining the attachments. Of course, Eleanor interjected. But I think you'll find that Ms. Lockhart is as much a victim here as Bennett and Associates. Her husband not only committed fraud by forging her signature on divorce papers, but he also appears to have stolen her access card and passwords to commit corporate espionage. Harrison leaned forward. What I don't understand is why Daniel would take such a risk. The security cameras are clearly visible. He must have known he'd be recorded. He thought it wouldn't matter, I said slowly, the terrible truth dawning on me. Because by the time anyone discovered the theft, he would be married to Camille Westbrook. He probably assumed I'd be blamed for leaking the information, or that at worst, it would look like I was helping my in-laws. Either way, he'd be protected by his new family. That's... Harrison struggled for words. That's cold-blooded. Yes, I agreed, my voice distant even to my own ears. It certainly is. While the detectives continued their questioning, my phone buzzed with another call from Daniel. Eleanor intercepted it. Mr. Harrington, this is Eleanor Zhao, your wife's attorney. Any communication from this point forward should go through me. She paused, listening. Actually, that's incorrect. You attempted to divorce her through fraudulent means. The marriage is still very much legally binding, which makes your attempted second marriage today a case of attempted bigamy. Another pause. I strongly advise you to retain counsel immediately. Good day. She ended the call with a decisive tap. He's panicking, she reported. Says he needs to explain everything to you in person. That's not happening, Meredith said firmly. Agreed, Eleanor nodded. Particularly now that there's a criminal investigation involved. My mind was spinning with the implications. Daniel hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, he had used our relationship to commit crimes that could send him to prison. And worse, his actions had cast suspicion on me, potentially destroying my career along with my marriage. There's something I don't understand, I said. Who sent me that email? Who knew about both the fake divorce and the wedding and made sure I found out at exactly the right moment to stop it? Detective Martinez looked thoughtful. That's an excellent question. Someone who had access to the fraudulent divorce documents and knew the wedding details. Any ideas? I shook my head. I've been asking myself the same thing. It could be someone who works at the courthouse, or someone connected to the Westbrooks, or... What about the notary? Eleanor suggested. Whoever notarized those forged signatures might have had second thoughts. We'll look into it, Martinez promised. In the meantime, Ms. Lockhart, I'd advise you not to have any contact with your husband or the Westbrook family. That won't be a problem, I assured him. As the meeting concluded, Harrison walked me to the elevator, his expression troubled. The board is meeting on Monday to discuss this situation. I'll do everything I can to make it clear you were not involved, but it looks bad, I finished for him. I understand. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I believe you completely. I've worked with you for 8 years. I know your character. His faith in me brought fresh tears to my eyes. Thank you. That means more than you know. Back in Meredith's loft, Eleanor spread papers across the coffee table, building our legal strategy. We need to file for divorce immediately, a real one this time, citing the forgery and his attempted bigamy. This gives us significant leverage in the settlement negotiations. I don't care about money, I said wearily. I just want this nightmare to be over. The money is the least of it, Eleanor replied. We need to protect your reputation. Daniel's actions have potentially implicated you in corporate espionage. We need to establish clear legal separation as quickly as possible. Meredith returned from the kitchen with fresh coffee. What about your house? Your accounts? Your stuff? I hadn't even thought about the practicalities. Everything's jointly owned. But he hasn't been staying at the house much lately. Now I know why. We'll file for exclusive use of the marital home pending the divorce, Eleanor said. You should change the locks immediately. Can I do that legally? Given the circumstances and his criminal behavior, yes. We'll include it in our emergency filing first thing Monday morning. My phone buzzed with yet another call from Daniel. Eleanor took it from my hands and powered it off. No contact, remember? Let him stew. What about the anonymous email? Meredith asked. Shouldn't we try to find out who sent it? Eleanor considered. It could be relevant to both the divorce and the criminal case. I'll have my investigator look into it. As they discussed strategy, I found myself drifting, the events of the day crashing over me in relentless waves. The image of Daniel standing at the altar with Camille. The shock on their faces when I interrupted the ceremony. The devastating confirmation that my husband had been systematically betraying me for months, perhaps years. And beneath it all, a question that kept resurfacing: how could I have been so blind? Had there been signs I'd missed? Moments when the truth had been right in front of me, but I'd chosen not to see it? Our life together had seemed so normal, so happy. Or at least, I'd thought it was. Now I wondered if that happiness had been as fraudulent as the divorce papers bearing my forged signature. Viv? Meredith's voice pulled me back to the present. Where did you go just now? I shook my head. Just trying to make sense of it all. Trying to understand how I could have lived with someone for 7 years and not known who they really were. Meredith squeezed my hand. This isn't on you. Daniel is a lying, manipulative criminal. You didn't miss anything because he made sure there was nothing to see. She's right, Eleanor agreed, uncharacteristically gentle. I've handled hundreds of divorces, and I can tell you this: when someone is determined to deceive, they can be incredibly effective. You have nothing to blame yourself for. I wanted to believe them. Part of me did. But another part, the architect in me, the one trained to see structural flaws, to anticipate problems before they happened, couldn't help but feel I should have known. My phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. Eleanor, who still had my phone, frowned as she read it. What is it? I asked. She hesitated, then handed me the phone. It appears to be from Camille Westbrook. The message was brief but devastating. I didn't know about you. I swear. He told me you divorced him last year after cheating on him. I'm as much a victim here as you are. Oh God, I whispered. He told her I cheated? That's why we divorced? Meredith took the phone and read the message. Classic manipulation. He created a narrative that made him the victim and you the villain. That way, if you ever did meet, she'd already be predisposed to distrust you. Should I respond? I asked Eleanor. She considered carefully. A brief acknowledgement might be appropriate. Something neutral that doesn't accuse but doesn't accept blame either. I took the phone back and typed. I understand you're in shock. So am I. For the record, I never cheated, and I never divorced Daniel. The documents were forged. I think we've both been deceived by the same man. After sending it, I powered the phone down again, suddenly exhausted. I can't deal with any more today. I just can't. You don't have to, Meredith said firmly. You're staying here tonight. We'll handle everything else tomorrow. Eleanor gathered her papers. I'll file the emergency petitions first thing Monday morning. In the meantime, get some rest. And Vivian? This will get worse before it gets better. But it will get better. I promise. After she left, Meredith set up the guest room for me, bringing fresh towels and a spare set of pajamas. Do you need anything else? Food? More wine? A voodoo doll of Daniel to stick pins in? That drew a small smile from me. Just sleep, I think. If that's even possible. Take one of these, she said, handing me a pill from her own prescription bottle. Doctor's orders. You need real rest tonight, not anxiety-driven insomnia. I accepted gratefully. As I changed into the borrowed pajamas, I caught sight of myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back at me. My eyes were red and swollen from crying, my normally neat hair disheveled, my complexion pale with shock. Was this what betrayal looked like? This hollow-eyed stranger wearing my face? I swallowed the pill and crawled into bed, pulling the covers up to my chin like a child afraid of monsters in the dark. Except my monster was real, and he wore my husband's face. Sleep came mercifully quickly, dragging me down into darkness. I dreamed of Daniel. Not the Daniel who had betrayed me, but the Daniel I thought I knew. The one who'd proposed on a rainy afternoon in the Japanese garden, raindrops catching in his eyelashes as he knelt before me. The one who'd held my hand through my father's funeral. The one who'd debated kitchen tile colors with me for 3 solid weeks when we renovated our house. Had that man ever existed? Or had he always been a facade, a carefully constructed mask hiding the real Daniel beneath? I woke hours later, disoriented and groggy. Morning light filtered through unfamiliar curtains, and for a blissful moment, I couldn't remember why I wasn't in my own bed. Then reality crashed back like a physical blow, and I curled into myself, fresh tears burning my eyes. My husband had divorced me without my knowledge. He had stolen my work to help his lover's family. He had been prepared to commit bigamy rather than face me with the truth. Every aspect of my life, personal and professional, lay in ruins around me. A gentle knock at the door preceded Meredith's entrance, bearing a steaming mug of coffee. "How are you feeling?" she asked, perching on the edge of the bed. "Like I've been hit by a truck," I admitted, accepting the coffee gratefully. Is it possible for the body to physically feel betrayal? Because I swear, everything hurts. That's the stress. Your whole system is in fight or flight mode. She tucked a strand of hair behind my ear in a maternal gesture. You should eat something. I made pancakes. I'm not hungry. You still need to eat. Come on, up. She tugged at my arm. Food first, then we make a plan. In the kitchen, I picked at the pancakes she set before me, each bite a struggle against the knot in my stomach. Meredith watched, concern evident in her dark eyes. What happens now? I asked finally, pushing the plate away. How do I even begin to rebuild? One step at a time, she said firmly. First, legal protection. Eleanor's handling that. Second, practical security. We need to change your locks, secure your accounts, get your personal items from the house. Third, work damage control with Harrison. And fourth? I asked, already drained by the first 3 steps. Fourth is healing. But that comes later. Right now, we focus on the immediate fires. She was right, of course. I couldn't afford to collapse into grief when so many practical matters needed attention. My entire life was a crime scene that needed processing before I could begin to recover. I want to go to the house, I decided. I need clothes, my laptop, personal documents. And I want to see. I need to see if there are clues I missed. Signs of what he was planning. Meredith looked uncertain. Is that a good idea? What if he's there? Then he can leave. It's still legally my house. I stood, finding strength in decisive action. Will you come with me? Of course. Let me call a locksmith to meet us there. An hour later, we pulled into the driveway of the craftsman-style bungalow Daniel and I had purchased 5 years ago. I felt a surge of relief when I didn't see his car, a sleek silver Audi I'd once teased him about as his midlife crisis car. For once, his absence was a relief. The house looked exactly as I'd left it yesterday morning, eerily normal given how my world had imploded since then. Coffee mug still in the sink. Mail scattered on the entryway table. The novel I'd been reading still splayed open on the arm of the sofa. I moved through each room like a detective, searching for evidence of Daniel's deception. In his office, I found financial statements for accounts I didn't recognize. In the master bathroom, a second toothbrush discreetly tucked in the back of a drawer. Small things. Forgettable things. The building blocks of a double life hidden in plain sight. The locksmith arrived and changed every lock while I packed essentials. Clothes, jewelry, important documents, family photographs. My life compressed into suitcases and boxes, loaded into Meredith's car by early afternoon. As we prepared to leave, I took one final look around the home I'd loved, the space I'd carefully designed to reflect our shared aesthetic. Now it felt tainted, each corner harboring a memory I could no longer trust. "Ready?" Meredith asked gently. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. As I turned to go, my gaze caught on a framed photograph on the mantel, Daniel and I on our wedding day, his arms wrapped around me, both of us laughing at some forgotten joke. I picked it up, studying his face for any sign of the betrayal to come. There was nothing. Just joy and love, or what I'd believed was love. I set the frame face down and walked out, closing the door on the life I thought I'd had. In the car, I turned my phone back on to a barrage of notifications. Missed calls from Daniel, Michael, unknown numbers. Texts from concerned colleagues who'd somehow heard about the wedding drama. And another anonymous email, this one containing a single line. "Now you know the truth. What will you do with it?"